The metallic groan of the tow truck's winch cut through the quiet of my Saturday morning like a knife. I was still in my slippers, coffee half sipped, when I stepped out onto my porch and froze. There she was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, leaning against the hood of a rented tow truck with her arms crossed like she was posing for a villain poster. My Ford F-250 was already tilted halfway onto the flatbed, its back tires dangling just above the pavement. She had that smug smirk plastered across her face, the one I'd seen too many times at HOA meetings, the one that always came right before a storm of made-up rules and impossible demands. I could feel the heat rising in my chest before I even opened my mouth. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" My voice cracked through the cool morning air. She didn't flinch. "You're in violation," she said flatly, waving a stack of HOA notices like they were sacred scripture. "Commercial vehicles are not allowed in driveways. You were warned." I laughed, sharp, bitter, disbelieving. "Warned? Karen, that's my personal truck. It's registered under my name, not a business, and last I checked, my driveway is on my deed, not the HOA's." She tilted her head like I was some clueless child. "The HOA rules apply to everyone, whether you like it or not." I stepped down the porch stairs slowly, feeling the gravel crunch under my feet, every step feeding my anger. "And you think you can just roll in here with a tow truck without a court order or the county's say-so?" She gave a little shrug, like it was nothing. "I don't need the county's say-so." That was the moment I knew she'd screwed up, because the county does get a say, especially when the county sheriff happens to be my cousin, Jake. I didn't waste another breath arguing. I pulled out my phone and hit speed dial. "Hey, Jake," I said, my voice low but tight. "You might want to come down to my place. HOA Karen's trying to tow my truck off my own driveway." There was a pause, then the sound of him exhaling sharply. "I'll be there in 5. Don't let them move a damn inch." I tucked the phone away and looked Karen dead in the eye. "You might want to put that truck back down before you regret it." Her smile didn't waver, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Empty threats don't scare me," she said. "You're not above the rules." "Neither are you," I shot back. That's when I noticed the tow truck driver looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. He wasn't some burly repo man. He was a scrawny 20-something with a nervous twitch, clearly regretting ever taking this job. "Ma'am, do you have the authority for this?" he asked, his eyes darting between us. Karen snapped at him like a whip. "Just do your job." But her voice cracked just enough for me to know she felt the ground slipping under her feet. It was only 3 minutes before the low rumble of Jake's county-issued Tahoe rolled into my driveway, but to Karen, it must have felt like hours. He stepped out in full uniform, sunglasses hiding the storm brewing in his eyes. "Morning, cousin," he said to me, then turned to Karen. "Step away from the truck." Karen's face drained. "Sheriff," he corrected, his voice cold as steel. "And you're trespassing on private property while attempting to commit vehicle theft." She sputtered, her words tumbling over each other. "It's not theft, it's enforcement. He's breaking HOA rules." Jake walked up to her slowly, deliberately, each boot step sounding like a gavel hitting wood. "The HOA doesn't trump county law, and you sure as hell don't have the authority to seize property from someone's driveway without due process. You hired a tow truck without a sheriff's order, without court approval, and on land that isn't under HOA jurisdiction. That's called grand theft auto where I'm from." The tow truck driver instantly lowered the bed, the hydraulic hiss sounding like a sigh of relief. Karen's jaw worked furiously, but no words came out. "You're lucky," Jake continued, "that I'm choosing to handle this as a trespass warning instead of cuffs. But you step 1 foot on this property again without cause, and I will personally book you." I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't done humiliating herself. She tried to pivot, raising her voice so the small cluster of nosy neighbors who had started to gather could hear. "He's abusing family connections to get out of consequences. This is favoritism." That was her fatal mistake. Jake didn't raise his voice, but it carried over the murmurs like a blade through silk. "This is me enforcing the law, the same way I would if you tried this on a stranger. And if you want proof, I've got the body cam running, and every neighbor here is a witness to your little stunt." You could feel the shift in the air, the tide turning against her. Neighbors who once kept their heads down at her HOA meetings were suddenly standing a little straighter, murmuring just loud enough for her to hear. Words like overreach, power trip, and ridiculous floated through the air. Karen's shoulders hunched, but she still tried to save face. "Fine," she spat, "but this isn't over." She stormed off toward her beige SUV, the picture of indignation, until Jake called after her, "You're right, it's not. Expect a summons from the county about unauthorized use of a tow service on private property." The way her step faltered told me she knew she'd stepped into a deeper hole than she could climb out of. Karen drove off that morning with her SUV jerking like she was trying to outrun the shame. But it didn't matter. What had happened was already burned into the neighborhood's memory. People had seen her get shut down, not just by me, but by the county sheriff himself, and that kind of scene doesn't fade quietly. Word moves faster than gossip when Karen's involved, and by that afternoon, every porch on our street was buzzing. The thing about Karen was, she thrived on the perception of power. She had built her whole HOA presidency on fear-mailing fines for made-up violations, threatening lawsuits, posting pictures of people's lawns in the newsletter with passive-aggressive captions like, "This is why rules exist." She didn't expect anyone to fight back. And now, after Jake's very public smackdown, her authority had cracks running through it. That's when the twist came. Around 5 p.m., I got a call, not from Jake, but from a guy named Robert Larkin. I barely recognized the name until he said, "I'm the tow truck company owner." My stomach tightened, thinking maybe Karen had tried something again. But Robert's voice had that edge of a man looking for a fight, just not with me. "The driver told me the whole story," he said. "Do you know she signed my company's name on a fake county order to tow your truck?" It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Not only had she trespassed, but she had forged official documents with a county seal. That moved her little HOA stunt into felony territory. Robert told me he'd already filed a complaint with the sheriff's department and the county attorney. "I don't care who she thinks she is," he said. "Nobody drags my business into a crime and walks away clean." 2 days later, Jake showed up at my place again, but this time, he wasn't just in his patrol Tahoe. Behind him rolled 2 unmarked county sedans. "You might want to watch this," he told me with a half smile. Across the street, Karen's beige SUV was in her driveway, and she was outside clipping roses like she didn't have a care in the world. The officers walked up with paperwork in hand, and her face twisted when she realized they weren't there to ask questions, they were there to serve her. "You can't just," she started, but one officer cut her off. "Ma'am, you're being served notice of investigation for forgery of public documents, attempted grand theft auto, and misuse of HOA authority." The words hit like hammer blows. I could see the neighbors pretending to check mailboxes just to watch. Karen tried to play the victim. "This is harassment. He's using family connections." Jake stepped forward, holding up a folder. "This isn't my case. The county assigned it to a different investigator. You're getting this because you committed crimes, not because of me." The news spread like wildfire. By the time the HOA board held its next meeting, half the neighborhood had shown up in person, and the rest were dialed in on Zoom. I went, not because I cared about HOA politics, but because I knew Karen would try to spin the narrative. Sure enough, she stood at the podium, voice shaking with that fake righteous anger she wore like perfume. "These accusations are baseless," she declared. "This is an attack on the HOA itself. If we let one person break the rules, we lose order. We lose order." Robert Larkin's voice boomed from the back. He had shown up uninvited, his company logo on his shirt. "Lady, you dragged my business into your personal vendetta, forged my name on fake documents, and tried to steal a man's truck. You're lucky you're not already in cuffs." The room erupted, people shouting, some in outrage, others in agreement. One older woman stood up and said what half the neighborhood had been thinking for years. "You've been bullying this community since you took that title. We're done letting you hide behind it." It was chaos, but it was glorious chaos, the kind where people who had been silent finally found their voices. By the end of the meeting, 3 board members had resigned, and the rest had voted to strip Karen of her presidency pending the investigation. She stormed out, not even staying for the vote. A week later, I saw her yard sign come down, that sign, the one she'd planted right after becoming HOA president, that read Pride, Order, Community. Someone had scrawled a single word across it in red spray paint: lies. The legal side didn't move as fast as the gossip, but it was steady. Forgery and misuse of authority aren't small charges in our county, and when the DA's office got wind that she'd been pulling similar stunts with other residents, tow threats, unauthorized fines, even trespassing to inspect backyard sit, turned into a full case. One morning, I heard the knock every HOA tyrant dreads. The police serving a search warrant. She was out in the driveway in her robe, shouting at the officers while they loaded boxes from her garage into a van. The last time I saw Karen in person, she wasn't in heels or holding a clipboard. She was in the county courthouse, standing next to a public defender, looking small in a way I'd never seen. No smug smile, no power posture, just a woman realizing she'd burned every bridge and the tide wasn't turning back. She took a plea deal: misdemeanor forgery, loss of any future HOA position, a hefty fine, and a year of probation. You'd think that would be the end of it, but the real ending wasn't about Karen at all, it was about the neighborhood. Without her iron grip, the HOA went from being a weapon to an actual community. Rules were rewritten, fines dropped, and the board actually started listening to residents. People threw block parties again. Kids played in driveways without parents worrying about noise violations. And that old fear, the one Karen had fed for years, was gone. One evening, Jake came by for a beer, and we sat on the porch watching the sun drop over the ridge. He raised his bottle toward the driveway. Hard to believe this all started because she tried to take that truck. I laughed. Hard to believe she thought she could get away with it. Jake grinned, but his voice was serious. She almost did. If you hadn't stood your ground, called me, and gotten witnesses, she might have twisted the story. People like her count on folks staying quiet. He was right, and maybe that's the real point. In the end, it wasn't just about a truck, it was about showing that bullies only win if you let them. Karen had power because people let her have it. The moment they stood together, she crumbled. So now, whenever I see a neighbor parking a camper in their driveway or hanging lights past HOA hours, I just smile. Not because I want chaos, but because I know we took our neighborhood back. And Karen? She moved 3 towns over, where rumor has it she tried to get on that HOA board. They didn't even let her finish her application. Turns out, news travels faster than moving vans. What do you think? Was Karen's punishment enough? Or did she get off easy?